am DAMIAN HOLBROOK from TV Guide Magazine and TV Insider. Welcome to New York Comic Con. This is the writers panel for Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous, and I am so excited to bring these guys out because, first of all, you've seen it, you know it kicks ass. And these guys, I love when we get to actually get the writers and the producers to come out and talk about stuff. So let's bring them out. We've got staff writers Sheela Shrinivas, Rick Williams, and Bethany Johnson, story editor Josie Campbell, consulting producer Zack Stentz, executive producer and showrunner Scott Kreamer, and executive producer Colin Trevorrow. Guys, congratulations. Fantastic job. This show, first of all, we're taping this in advance, and you're only 36 hours after opening the doors to Camp Cretaceous, and the reviews are in. I just want to read a couple quick ones. At Camp Cretaceous is incredible. The name drops, the aviary scene, and just the whole show in general is so well done. I hope they find a way to make a second one and tie in Dominion. And that is from at Benjamin Says. At Party Ship Down says, she's got a point of view, she's an icon, she's a legend, she is the moment. Hashtag Camp Cretaceous is truly Bumpy's world, and we just live in it. Stan Bumpy. Eduquave says, the beauty of Jurassic World, hashtag Camp Cretaceous, goes beyond the gorgeous animation and dinosaur scenes. Its heart is the diverse, talented cast. Representation is important. It makes a special impact. Thank you all. And hashtag Camp Cretaceous absolutely stole my heart. I've grown up all 22 years of my life the biggest hashtag Jurassic Park, Jurassic World fan imaginable, and season 1 of this series somehow made me fall in love with this franchise all over again as if it were the first time. That's from Twitter, and you know those people are tough. And this is such a beloved franchise and a bold move on your part to take this on. So something that the fans asked at Linkhart112 wanted to know, I want to know, how long has this been in production?
Zach, you want to take this? You kind of kicked off this whole thing.
I went back and looked at my email because I'm terrible at deleting emails, and saw that my very first one on this show was from April 2017, and it was that was the very first meeting, and we've been working on it ever since with different people coming on board. I had no idea that animation. I was new to animation, so I had no idea animation lead times were so long. But it's been quite a journey for all of us.
And how does it feel now that it's out and people are reacting so well to it?
Fantastic. Yeah. It's like we've been working on this thing for a long time, and we put a lot of thought and love and care into it. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited people get to see the work this team's been doing. We're really proud of it.
And Colin, how does it feel for you seeing the Jurassic World, whole universe, the metaverse now, expanding this way? Because this is kind of like, this is a risky move to take this franchise into this direction.
Yeah, it didn't feel as risky once I read the scripts. I think everybody found a way to ground this in the experiences that kids have today, what it's like to grow up as a child in 2020, which is quite a time to grow up. And there's a lot of anxieties and fears, and anxiety and fear is such a big part of the brand, as you say it, as part of Jurassic Park. And so I think by taking protagonists at this part in their lives and forcing them into a situation that is horribly full of all those same anxieties and fears, I thought it was an amazing thing to do, and I just got fired up about it.
And Zach, how did you land on, because as you're developing the ideas and bouncing around all these possibilities, how did you land on Camp Cretaceous? The creators, going all the way back to Michael Crichton of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, did 3/4 of the work for me by having kids be a huge part of the franchise, going all the way back to Lexi and Tim in the first movie and the first novel. So it was really just a matter of imagining, well, what if we had the kids from, like Zach and Grady from Jurassic World, or Lexi and Tim from Jurassic Park, and not have heroic adults there to save them? What if they had to save
what if they had to save themselves? And that was the kind of germ that it all grew from. And then going back and watching Colin's movie like it was the Zapruder film, realizing that he created this wonderful, huge world, and there was room for us to play in another corner of it that you didn't see in the movie. So it's very easy to imagine that our kids are having their adventure off in another corner while the main characters are having theirs.
At Entertainment Guru 817 wanted to know what was the most difficult thing about animating the dinosaurs?
Well, I mean, gosh, I mean, it's tricky. You want it to be like an animal. You don't want to anthropomorphize it just because this is a kid's cartoon. Our animation lead Dan Godinez and our animation studio CG in Taiwan and the whole team. I mean, it's not just the dinosaurs, but also the kids themselves. There's a lot of subtlety to the acting, which I think adds a great deal of reality to it. It's like Colin had talked about, it's a fantastical world, but we really wanted to do a grounded show and not have Bumpy be Scrappy Doo. I mean, they've got to be animals.
Right.
So it's a lot of time. It's a lot of hard work from some talented people.
Yeah. And going back to what Zach was talking about with the world that was set up, and I remember reading the novel before the movie, and the T-Rex sequence actually, I mean, it was probably the first time since I read The Exorcist that I was like terrified by the written word. And you mentioned Lexi and Tim and Grady and Zach, and Darkstar HTTYD also wants to know what helped you decide on the Jurassic World presence rather than the Jurassic Park concept.
Going back to it, it's again, the bigness of the Jurassic World setting was just so inviting, and the fact that you're seeing these little glimpses of, wow, there are these attractions that we didn't even get a chance to go to, and the idea of actually getting to spend some time in that park and in that setting was kind of irresistible.
Keep watching, because it's about to get real.
And Colin, for you, having done the movies and knowing that this was going to be the setting for the camp stuff, how fun was it to go back and look at the film and think like, oh, this is a great place that we can post some of the action?
Although I'm throwing that one to Sheela, like that was kind of your experience, right? Like what was it like to go through and have to tell an alt story within an established universe?
Daunting, but I think, I think we've said versions of this many times, but I think when you approach story from a character-focused, kid-focused place, it becomes really easy. It's universal storytelling. I think I approach every story that I write in terms of what I want people to feel, moments that I think will really land, and so not to in any way diminish that, like Zach was saying, the bigness of this universe. It feels like you can't go wrong.
There's that very comforting, though it's weird to be comforted by the Jurassic World events, but when you get that overshot of the island and that image of what the main hub of the attraction and the theme park was from the film, you're like, oh, I know this. And then you forget, like, oh, there was carnage here at the end of Jurassic World. You're like, oh, I know that there's a Starbucks there and there's like a Benihana. So for Josie, as the story editor, you led the writer's room for season 1. So can you talk a little bit about fleshing out these characters and how you wanted them to evolve over season 1? Because they do a lot of growth while dealing with a lot of crazy stuff.
I mean, it's kind of what Sheila was saying, which was we were trying to take this giant big world, this world that's been established in the movies, and really tell it through these characters. So like a lot of the growth is happening because they're going through all of this stuff. Then sort of on the character side of things, I don't think it's like surprising to say a little bit of the template was that sort of breakfasty club. Here's sort of these teen characters, here's sort of the archetypes they are, and then sort of having fun and trying to explode those a little bit. And I think that's where putting them on the run, especially, really helped the characters shine.
Fine, you drive! Just get us out of here! Finally! Let me show you how it's...
And I was telling friends before, because we get to see it in advance, I was like, oh, it's Willy Wonkasaurus. There's a total Willy Wonka situation going on, and I loved watching it play out. But then you start to see these characters as like we're introduced to like archetypes, and then as we meet them and find out more about that, for the writers, were there any characters that you were excited to write for?
There was one character in particular who we felt like we never knew what to do with. There were so many conversations in those early days when you're having to you're doing the really fun work of like, who is this person? Like, what makes them tick? And we couldn't really get a handle on her. And I feel like the conversation always centered around the word likable, whether she was likable. And I think there are people who are much smarter than me who have talked about this, but for kids especially, and for teen girls especially, it would really make me think about like just the like incredibly conflicting messages that we send to teenagers, to teen girls especially, of like, you can be whatever you want, but like not like that. The character I'm talking about is Yaz. And it's been really gratifying to see how many people on the internet have named her as their favorite character. And it kind of speaks to just the authenticity that kids are looking for. I think has so much more to do with relatability than it does likability. And I hope it's a lesson to kind of expand, characters who might be a little surlier, who might be more defensive, who might put up a wall, adopt a defensive posture, to figure out like what is really driving that is the work that makes writing so interesting. So yeah.
Is there a character that you guys like most identified with?
I don't think I'm going to shock the writers by saying Darius, because I started the writers' room and I was like, okay, well, we'll all bring in our dinosaur encyclopedias that we all own, obviously. And then everybody looked at me and I was like, I'll bring in my dinosaur encyclopedias that I own. And here's my animal behavior guide. And here's like 5 different dinosaur posters. So we all have these things. But it's also like a little bit, I think what Sheela was saying, which I really agree with, is I think also too the characters that we ended up having the most fun with is Yaz and then Brooklyn especially. And there was a lot of conversations about like likability, wanting these characters to be able to have an edge and feel like real teenagers, but without making it so that the audience is alienated from them. And I think we did get there, and especially I think with Yaz and Brooklyn, seeing people react and being like, wow, they're my favorite character, or even like, I couldn't believe that like my favorite character is like the YouTube unboxing girl, but like she's great. Like I think it's exactly what Sheila's saying. A lot of what we were doing is taking what we related to these characters and going, it's not about likability, it's about relatability. Can you relate to this person? Do they feel real? And I think we really got there, especially with the female characters.
Just real quick, 2 glasses of wine in, we are all Sammy. Everyone.
That's true.
Everybody.
We're all a bunch of liars because you've seen me, like, and M, who's not on this call, who's in season 1, like, our voice is getting shriller and shriller as we're getting excited about something. We're all Sammy, deep down.
I'm such a ding-dong. You're alone, and when I feel alone, having a friend around sure is nice, and I could use a friend, and you probably could too. So I thought, wait, Yasmina just needs someone to make the first friendship move, so here I am. I lost you around ding-dong.
But going back to Brooklyn, I remember Colin specifically talking about the pressures on these influencers, and we really did a lot of work on Brooklyn. I think once we landed on the fact that she was losing followers, I think that kind of opened it up for Brooklyn. Now suddenly she's a relatable, sympathetic character. And I think in the early days, I think we probably had the most trouble with her and Yaz, like you guys are saying.
I think it was finding the things that they were vulnerable about was the key to all of these characters. That, Brooklyn's losing characters and she cares about what people say online. I care about what people say online about me. I totally get that. Or like for, like Yaz, like having that shield up because, which then is sort of destroyed with the betrayal by like Sammy. It was finding everybody's weakness basically that let us like them.
And Bethany and Rick, what was the thing that you were most proud to have gotten on screen from the page?
I really liked some of the bigger ideas that we talked about in the show. before we broke each episode, it was really important for Josie and the rest of us to really sit down and figure out what we were trying to say in each episode, besides just writing about kids running from dinosaurs, as entertaining as that is. So some of the themes we talked about in the episodes deal with things like trust and trying too hard to be liked, and like we were just talking about with Brooklyn and even Darius. Themes of abandonment and bravery and even loss, which is a big one. We see Darius deal with that a lot in a really great episode that our pal M. Willis wrote. And it's something that obviously weighs with Darius throughout the rest of the series, the entire show. So there's some really sort of good topics in there. And it was important for us to sit down and discuss what the meaning of each episode was going to be about. Beyond that, there was sort of this bigger idea that we all talked about and that really spoke to us, sort of about, and Scott alluded to this earlier, about how kids are left in this world that's sort of left to shambles right now. And it's like, here you go, good luck with that, guys. And yet, despite all of their, the failings that we have as adults, kids somehow sort of rise up to the challenge. They pick themselves up, they pick up the pieces, and they survive, they go on, which is really sort of impressive. You see in this episode, it's episode 5, Happy Birthday, Eddie, that Darius is very excited to go. They found an adult, and here is their savior, and he's pretty much the worst dude on the planet they could have found. And so, they realize, like, I guess it's up to us to save ourselves. And I think that's something, especially now, kids can relate to. And to us, I think we were just wanted to applaud, how resourceful and cooperative and smart and clever and brave kids can be. So that was really nice to translate to the page for me.
And Bethany?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of talked about earlier. Josie calls this like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern stuff. So for me, I always considered it the Back to the Future 2 stuff, because that's like also one of my favorite franchises. So it was really fun to kind of like think about like what Josie was talking about, the notebook full of all the places that, were hit in the movie and like where we could go and what we could do. And we all watched the movie together at the start of this, and that's always great research, is just like getting paid to watch a movie, you can't beat it. So, so that was always really fun. And I think, I know Zach has talked like in other interviews and stuff about the Masrani's helicopter flying into the, aviary and stuff like that, which is of course like a great moment. And I love that one. But I think my favorite is like a kind of more subtle moment of, Bumpy is introduced in episode 2, and we all love Bumpy because of course, who doesn't love an adorable dinosaur? Wu kind of alludes to that she's going to be given to a herd of ankylosauruses. And then I think it's episode 5 where we see the kids kind of run into Bumpy again. And it's this moment where it's not really talked about in the show at all, but you see a down gyrosphere. And that's the gyrosphere that Zack and Gray were in when the Indominus was like attacking and all that sort of stuff. So it's just like a little moment where we're like, oh, that links up. And you may not notice it in the show, you may not like recognize it while watching it, but just kind of a subtle thing that I love, those sorts of little moments. So that was really fun to kind of figure out small little things. And then my favorite, it's not really like a moment, but it's just a little like nod to the movies, is I think Josie wrote this line, forgive me if it was somebody else, but where Ben's talking about, they've crashed the van, and now, or no, it's before they crash the van, sorry, it's when they get into the van and nobody knows how to drive, and somebody, I think it's Sammy, is like, oh, this has got to be like a gyrosphere. And he's like, that had a Jimmy Fallon tutorial. And like, I just love that little nod to the movie. It's such a ridiculous thing in the movie, which is great, like a great thing.
You mentioned the aviary scene because when you think about it, we see that in Jurassic World from 3 points of view. Masrani, Owen and Claire, and also at like Command Central.
Yeah.
Because they're watching on the screen. And now this is our 4th version of how that all played out. And I love what Rick just talked about, the kids kind of like, the show, has the emotional lives of these kids. And that really so ties into what Colin sets up in Jurassic World with Zack and Gray, because they have stuff going on that, for as big as everything that's happening in the park, their world is falling apart outside of it as well, because their parents are splitting up. And the emotional thread of that, which I love, it's one of my favorite moments in Jurassic World, is the holding hands scene in the back of the van, where they're like sitting there and you just see like the arms reach out, and just so that it ties in so nicely with how the kids in this show are connecting as well. Colin, what made it the right time for an animated version of Jurassic World?
I feel like there's a generation of kids who've really gotten into these films, and a dinosaur fan is born every minute. And for us to be able to make these movies, we put a lot of heart and soul and care into them, and it takes 3 years to make them. And if you're 6, that's like half your life already, where you've had to wait for this movie. And so we figured, I just felt like the ability to give kids something that they could delve into, especially when it comes to their understanding of science and natural history, and be able to constantly have this instigator for curiosity of what happened on this planet before we were here. I love that stuff, and I love how much it's something that this group has done so well is to make it both intellectually satisfying and emotionally satisfying at the same time, and to really focus on the stem of it all and the science, and remind children that even though the Indominus Rex is not real, it's not a real dinosaur, these other ones were. And I also really liked how, just as they were saying, the ability for the audience to be familiar with Jurassic World and know its timeline creates this anxiety over the course of the show, because you understand where we are in how it all goes down, and they're just reached this point where you're just like, these kids need to get out of here. Like, this is bad. And you still know, there's like 4 episodes left. Like, what's going to happen? And when it goes down, it really goes down. And I was so, it's something it's a bit of a Stephen mandate in a way. And I share it, that we want these fears to be real and these dangers to be real. And all these writers delivered on that tenfold. My kids were shocked when the moment happens.
Yeah. Okay, so going into it, like the first episode, I was like, how is this going to work? Because, I mean, this is actually not a franchise for children. And I was like, I was starting to worry. I'm like, okay, if the stakes are like cartoon version stakes, and then, you went there. Scott, can you talk about balancing that, the lightness and the comedy? Because the kids, I mean, I love the fact that these are real kids and they have senses of humor with the actual dark elements of the franchise.
Yeah, the tricky thing actually was kind of pulling back on some of those lighter moments. Like, you need the light moments, you need the release of tension. But like, for instance, early on, we had to go re-record the cast screaming, because there's a difference between Saturday morning cartoon screaming and I'm going to get eaten and die screaming. So we had to go back and get everyone to scream. We have a whole library filled with screams, but we had to go back.
A whole afternoon of telling teenagers, no, but like you're dying. Like, could we blood curdling? Thank you.
You dumb kids! Get down here, right?
Well, that's the thing, is like, when you get into Fallen Kingdom, like the second half of Fallen Kingdom is a straight up horror movie. Like, that is like, it is a gothic horror movie by the end. What do you do to that little girl with the whole bedroom sequence? I was like, what am I watching? This is terrifying. And I love that along the way, like, kids, in this, like, they get injured, and there's just like those little touches that a lot of animated shows don't think of, like that they get dirty. Yeah. Like, they get splashed with mud, their hair gets messy. And I know, Colin, this is apparently like kind of like a bucket list thing for you to be part of the writer's room.
Oh, absolutely, man. It was, I probably showed up more than I was actually invited. But you guys need me again, right? Yeah. No, it was so great. It's something that I've always, I have dreamed of doing, to be able to be with a bunch of really creative people in a room, just, trying to break something and trying to top ideas, and like, how can we make this as effective and as it can possibly be, and for everyone to have the same shared mission. It's amazing, and it was as amazing as I thought it would be. So thanks to all of you for letting me hang out.
Yeah, and for you guys, how was it having him there so much? Because it's got to be so helpful to know, like, this is the guy who created literally the timeline we're working in.
I mean, we loved having Colin in the room. I mean, it was awesome talking with him. It was awesome talking with another storyteller. And I mean, that very first time he came in, like, we spent like 2 hours talking about like each character. Like, it was so focused. And then we've enjoyed having him come in every other time. I think like Sheila and Rick and Bethany can like sort of speak more to that, because we would always get excited when we're like, Colin's gonna come, this is gonna be great. We're hanging out with this really smart guy who's like basically our friend now, and we're talking about dinosaurs. This is amazing.
I thought it was because sometimes they'd give us all tiny sandwiches when I show up.
I mean, you're also excited about that.
If Colin and Zach came, we would get better food from Dream. That is absolutely.
So, Rick and Bethany, did you guys like pick his brain?
Oh yeah, well obviously like the dude and Zach too for that matter, both of these dudes, like very, above all, very generous with their time, very generous with their thoughts, their notes. So we were just humbled that they would make time in their schedule to come sit with us. But beyond having like this deep knowledge and love of the franchise, obviously, and really great big ideas, what I thought was especially cool was that Colin came in and said, like, this is your guys' show. He really was sitting in there as like a writer, like a fly on the wall, also saying, this is your show, it's animated, it's different, like embrace that, make it yours. And that, I thought that was just really cool that he encouraged us to let this thing be its own special thing, sitting in its own special place in this franchise, which I thought was nice. Also, he brought us alcohol, which was very cool.
That helped. That helps. Yeah.
Good point.
And you guys have all mentioned there like little Easter eggs and moments, but like for Bethany, when you guys were writing, what kind of research did you guys put in to find like those great spots to plug in, the tie-in?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to this a little earlier, but like Josie was talking about with her notebook and stuff, and we watched the movie all together, and I think that's when we created that whole notebook list of like, okay, what's happening at each spot. And I remember, we printed out a map of the island, and we put little like stickies and stuff of like, okay, this is where this happens and that. So we were like mapping their trajectory of the kids, like, okay, if camp's here and then the park is here, then they're going to go this way, and like what drives them that way, and then we would look back at the movie and be like, oh, this stampede or this event from the movie could kind of drive them around. So it was fun to kind of visualize all of that. And yeah,
I remember there's one scene in the movie where they're in the HQ and they've kind of got the Indominus's course, and we had that up, and it's like, okay, well, this is where we're going, and where can we intersect, and where do we have to get out of the way? It was a fun puzzle.
Colin, do you have a favorite crossover moment?
I like that my favorite thing is that you do see the kayaks very briefly in Jurassic World in one shot. Right. In the distance, there's a kayak ride, and it suggests this whole, other amazing attraction, and they fully realized, what that was. So to be able to just have a little glimpse of something way in the background, and then have that be such a major part of this show, I thought that was pretty awesome. And then they made up new, the zip line thing, like made up entire new parts of the park that you didn't get to see. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Zach, was there anything that made it into the series that you had always hoped that you would see in the films?
Something that I always, one of the fun things, I like to think about the world building behind movies. And one of the really cool things when you go back and look at Jurassic World is that it's among other things, it's a very sly satire of modern theme parks and how they work. And the idea of getting to see, like if you watch the documentaries of like behind the scenes at Disneyland, behind the scenes at Universal Studios, that's the part that's always fascinating to me, is like, what are the mechanics going on behind the scenes that's making all of this that the visitors are seeing work. And the fact that the kids get to go into those tunnels and get to pull back the curtain a little bit on the attraction, felt like a really fun way of expanding that world.
I thought of another one, which I really love, is that you guys made the research facility a whole part of the show. And there was just one sign when the truck goes by with the Raptors chasing that says research over there, and it has a little icon on it. No other mention in the entire movie except for that sign, and they made it a whole part of it. It's great.
And you've provided viewers, especially of a certain age, a very diverse cast with all sorts of different backgrounds, but all very universally appealing. Like we get it. Like every one of them, no matter where they're from, like I get it. I understand what this character is from, where she's from, what she's going through, what he's done. How important was it for you guys when you were putting it together? Like even the design of the characters is diverse.
Yeah, I mean, it was hugely important from the very beginning, and that was something that all of us shared. You know, both from a perspective of that's the 21st century, baby. It's not you know 5 white kids and their 1 person of color friend. It's you know that we live in a diverse society, and it felt really important to recognize that, and that's you know that's another way that works for you.
And how did you guys kind of approach the inclusion? Because there is a lot there, but it's never heavy-handed.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, good representation starts with good characterization, good character development. And so if there's no attempt to really delve into the humanity of these kids, to really make them 3-dimensional people, then it is tokenism. Nobody wants tokenism.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, just on a broader level, like you look at this group of people, even if the many conversations that we had about race and about culture and how that informs these kids, even if that doesn't necessarily make it into an episode, even if that's not the subject of an episode, when a writing staff looks like this, kids can be assured that you know, those conversations are being had. They are representative, I think, of how kids think about the world, and you know, that's what we want. We want more of that.
I went to school with every single one of those kids. I can identify, with not only the character who sort of I relate to personally, but with all of them. I think there's a little bit of all of those kids, which makes them truly universal, because they're like, to their point, they're humans, they're people, and I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, and one of my favorite episodes is episode 7, Sheela, that you wrote, the monorail episode, because you really get to see those kids and what they're all about interacting, and, you know, in that pressure cooker kind of environment. And we actually get to see, you know, kind of, again, behind the curtain of like who they're presenting themselves to be, to who they are on a deeper level.
And in the context of great carob jokes.
Yeah, of course.
So many.
I think that was my favorite Colin note that we ever got, was that chocolate is nature's chocolate.
Thank you.
Not wrong.
And speaking of inclusion and diversity, you also give us and include a very diverse collection of dinosaurs. You didn't go with the expected line that the people know of. How did you pick like Toro to be like the big villain, and Bumpy to be, you know, like, I mean, there's a lot of cute baby dinosaurs. They're all cute until they start screaming. How did you guys come up with them, and what's your favorite breed, I guess?
Well, Bumpy was, I guess, Zach, you had Bumpy as an ankylosaurus, didn't you?
No, that was you guys. Bumpy was originally a Myosaurus. Bumpy was originally a Myosaurus, and that was all credit to you guys for you know, having an ankylosaurus instead, which you know, among her many other virtues, gets to, as you pointed out, slot into the Indominus massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Right, which is probably why we ended up doing that, because we'd always had the idea of, well, wouldn't it be interesting if that was the herd that Bumpy was involved. As far as Toro goes, you know, you'd love the Indominus just to be your heavy and see as much of the Indominus as you can, but we know where that story goes, so our kids can't be victorious over the Indominus, because and I think we were just looking for, well, what's a cool, scary looking dinosaur?
I mean, I think we looked at, because we also knew like sort of what, because it was CG, we had some models already pre-built. And we also had some of the CG models actually that had been sort of simplified from the movies that we could use. So we were kind of like looking through like the dinosaurs, and I think we landed on Carnotaurus because like it's it really is
terrifying. It has devil horns.
Like, to the fact that like it has like in the movies it has more arms than like it would have in real life. Like I think Bethany had found some research talking about the fact that their arms really were vestigial. Like it was two little like flesh flaps, which means it was just a mouth on a body. Like it's cool. It's a cool, scary dinosaur that you would not want chasing you through the camp, and it is absolutely chasing them through the camp.
I know I'm a compy. I don't want to be. I'm always snacking. I'm always meddling.
Nick?
I like the Parasaurolophuses.
That one.
Especially we see them in the bioluminescent caves in the kayaking. And they're sort of just like the techno dinosaurs just down there glowing, chilling, doing their thing.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Mosasaurus. I mean, just that sequence itself, if nothing else. Our team did such an amazing job making that look so spectacular. It's so cinematic. And I mean, like, yeah, you can't get better than that.
Yeah, that was being able to do because the Mosasaurus is such a memorable part of Fallen Kingdom and Jurassic World. Getting to essentially do a little half-hour Jaws story with our kids in the Mosasaur in that lagoon was so much fun.
Scott, you wrote the final episode of this first season, so let's talk about kind of that. They're dealing with a loss. They're going to have to deal with the trauma of what they've gone through. So talk about the state of mind these kids are in and where we leave them.
Yeah, well, it's like everyone's been talking about. You want to start here with a character and end up here. So while things are infinitely worse for them, really, when you look at it, they're abandoned on this island. Ben is gone, and things are rough, but like Rick alluded to, but they're kids and they're resilient. And while their situation is much worse, they're a team now, they're a family now, they're together, they have each other's backs. So it just kind of sets the stage for like, what's next? Okay, this is our situation. Now we have to move forward.
At OJB123 wants to know, will future seasons intertwine with other films? And I think Scott and Colin, you actually have something to say about possible future seasons, correct?
Well, people seem to like this first one, so we were thinking let's have another one come out. What do you think, Colin? Does that sound like something?
Yeah, we exist by the pleasure and the permission of our audience, and if people like what we're doing, we'll certainly do more. I'm very excited about it, because for the show that I felt like this had the potential to be, when we got to the end of this first season that everyone's seeing now, for me, I felt like, oh, now the show starts, because now here we are, and we know who these characters are, and we get to really have them be in a situation that we don't have any idea what the timeline is. We don't know where this is going. Mm-hmm. And that to me is very exciting, and also to really clarify, as we move forward and weave this story into the larger quilt in a way that hopefully just verifies for everyone how much this really is a part of the larger story we're telling. And I think we can, it's not just some extra thing that we did. It's something that we really care about, and it is really it's part of our whole world.
And so does that mean that Josie, Rick, Sheila, and Bethany get to actually see like the dailies for Dominion, or do they get like a special advanced preview?
These guys probably know more about Dominion than most people on the planet, to be honest. So yeah, we talk about all of it. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, it really wasn't. I didn't have any secrets about it, because I wanted them to understand the macro story that we were telling, so we could make sure that this reflected not just that day at Jurassic World, but planting some seeds for the future. And I don't feel like I'm just a custodian of this. Like, I didn't write Jurassic Park, and I didn't direct Jurassic Park, and I'm very I feel so grateful that I'm even able to tend to this garden just for a time in my life. And I feel like all of us share that with each other, that we just get to plant some stuff and see it grow. And it's been hugely rewarding.
And has there been any talk about, like, because of the time between Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, with these kids stuck on the island, do you get the freedom to maybe use some of the characters from Jurassic World to come back and save them?
Well, you know, I don't want to get spoilery or anything, but there is something to consider, that there is that 3-year, you know, there's 3 years between the two films.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is a lot of freedom, but really, it's like Colin said, the story starts now. This isn't a show about where adults come and save kids. This is a show about kids alone and having no one to count on but each other. So
you asked me earlier about the moment when I assured all of these guys, like, look, this is your show. And I think that in the first season, you know, that was true, but it was existing in the context of something else. And now with season 2, it is their show. Where we're going forward, you know, belongs to all of these minds, and that's very exciting to me too.
Yeah, so we will have a season 2 dropping early next year.
I want to thank you all. Congratulations. An incredible first season. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Dominion. Congratulations on basically writing the rules for creating a massive film in COVID. And to you guys, to Scott and Zach and Josie and Rick and Sheila and Bethany and Colin, thank you all so much. Congratulations again. Hopefully I'll see you for season 2 when we do this, possibly even in live, you know, in person.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, don't forget, you guys, catch Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous on Netflix now. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Damien.